Hello, Rob B here with Rob D. Now, let's face it, in property, in life, we all love doing a deal. But the property market is hot right now. So does that mean that doing a deal or doing a BMV deal, below market value deal, is off the cards? It can't happen. It's hard enough in a normal market? Well, we're going to have a look at it. We'll see if BMV is dead, or is there a way you can still do a deal?
Welcome to the Property Podcast, where every Thursday morning, property investors come to be informed and inspired. A hot property market is great news if you already own property. It's not such great news if you're trying to buy property, and especially if you're trying to do a deal. So in this episode, we're going to talk about what's realistic in the current market and how to give yourself the best possible chance of getting a deal done. And there are some tips in there that you might not have thought of. So make sure you stick around to the end for Hub Extra, because it's not easy to be a buyer in the current market. You're going to need a bit of motivation and inspiration, and that's what we've got for you in Hub Extra.
So it's time for our news story of the week now, and you may remember from last week, we were stunned by some data from the US property market, where we reported, but didn't quite believe, that the US market is up 23% year on year, which is just mind-blowing. That is crazy growth. You think it's going great guns here? Well, that's double the pace. So we promised to go and investigate and have a look into the US market a little bit more. So we bring you another news story this week from our good friends over the pond about their property market.
Yeah, we thought that number couldn't possibly be right, so we went away to look into it a bit. And it turns out it's a bit different, because that was just measuring existing inventory, doesn't include new homes. If you go and look at the latest data we could find for the housing market in general in the US, it's up a mere 15.8% year on year. So it makes our own boom look like nothing, really. So it is just crazy. And that, of course, is just the average. And the article that we're looking at, which is in Forbes, notes that there are other markets like Miami in particular in what it calls super boom mode. So growth is even faster. Why is this happening is the obvious question. And it looks like the factors are all pretty much the same as in the UK. And if I can use this as an excuse to do my macro bit yet again, Rob, why would the boom be even bigger in the US? It's because the stimulus has been even bigger in the US. Year over year money growth in the UK was about 15% last year. In the US, it was 25%. And there was also a lot more direct stimulus going on. So we had things like furlough, but they were literally sending checks to people. And so there's a lot more money that's been dropped directly into people's pockets there. It's only natural that finds its way into asset prices. We've seen it in the stock market, and we're seeing it very much with housing as well.
Yeah, it's not surprising, Rob. Although we say that, the data still surprises us. It's not surprising that it's rising. It's just that the rate it's going up. It's astonishing, really. And I think this is something we'll need to look at towards the end of the year. Obviously, we'll review the UK market, but I think an episode to review what's happening across the world is going to be interesting as well. So later this year, November time possibly, we'll have a look at the markets around the world and round up what has happened this year. Because it's useful to understand what's happening in the UK, of course, but it's also useful and really interesting to understand what's happening across the globe. So we will cover that in the coming months.
A quick note as well on another news story that we spotted this week, which is around the ongoing cladding issue, and good news for owners of flats in blocks below 18 metres, because the government has now come out and said definitively that you don't need an EWS1 certificate for blocks below 18 metres. Now, RICS had already recommended this, but lots of lenders were still requesting these forms. Lenders may still continue to request these forms because this is just guidance from the government. It's not anything binding, but it is helpful at least. And this whole cladding thing, which we've been reporting on for years, and I'm sure we'll continue to report on it for years, it has been a complete mess. But at least now some of that mess may be going away for a segment of the market at least. But like I said, it's far from being the end of the issue in general, so we will continue to report as there are further developments.
Exciting news for the Property Hub magazine. If you're not a subscriber yet, why not? Because it's our 30th issue coming out in September. We've got features of the return of gazumping and tips to avoid being outbid at the last minute, pulling equity from property, and the rise of the brand lord. Our cover takes a deep dive into the new build sector and weighs up the pros and cons of buying new. We also catch up with Phil Stewardson and his brother Mark, who appeared in the very first issue of the magazine back in 2015, May 2015, in fact. Wowzers. Can't believe the magazine's been going that long. Plus, there's more case studies and useful guides to boost your knowledge. Now, if you haven't subscribed already, you haven't got much time to get this special edition, make sure you subscribe by the 18th of August and your copy will be delivered to the door. It's going to be a really special issue. So if you're not a subscriber yet, then what are you doing? It's a £5. It's an absolute bargain. And if you are a subscriber, well, lucky you. What a wonderful thing to look forward to.
When you first get into the world of property, you'll start hearing about buying below market value. It's something you hear about all the time. It's a real buzzword, especially, it's worth saying, from people who are selling you courses about how wonderful this is and how easy it is to buy a property for less than it's worth. Now, in reality, it's never been as easy as the courses make out to buy a property below market value. Why would it be? Why would anyone sell you a property for less than it's worth if they could avoid it? But it has always been possible, whether it's through flyers through doors, newspaper adverts, knocking on doors, doing deals in bulk. There have always been ways to buy below market value, even if it involves putting a lot of work in. But what about in today's market? We've talked extensively on the podcast in recent months about just how hot the property market in the UK and indeed around the world is. So does that mean that the concept of below market value is dead? Or is it still possible in today's market? That's what we're going to explore in this episode. So Rob, to start us off, I said that BMV was something that you hear about all of the time. It's a property buzzword, but not everyone will have heard of it. So let's start with a quick definition of what below market value actually means.
In its simplest form, it's buying at a discount. And that's why property is so appealing. I mean, there's loads of reasons why property is appealing. Leverage and the way it plays against inflation and so on. There are a long list of reasons why people like property. But one of them is your ability to potentially do a deal that means that you've bought at a rate that is below the market rate. So if you wanted to buy a share in Tesla, you can't speak to Elon Musk and put an offer in and see if he'll accept an offer below the current share price. Just doesn't happen that way. You can't buy gold and go, you know what, I want to pay a bit less than the current rate at the moment. It just doesn't happen. You pay the rate. Now, with those other asset classes, the price is the price. And you don't have to pay more than that price, but you can't get below. And I think it is worth saying that you can overpay in property as well. So there is the risk there as well. And in a booming market, people who are very excitable sometimes do overpay to secure a property because they get too emotional. Now, I've mentioned the word discount, but it's got to be a genuine discount. You can have an asking price and get some money knocked off it, but it doesn't mean you've bought a property that's below market value. So I could sell you a pen, and the pen might be in one shop 20, 30 pence. I could have a pen and go, my pen is £100. But I'm going to do you a discount. I'm going to give you it half price. And I'm going to give it to you for £50. Like, wow, it's very generous. I've got a half price pen. And then you get out of the shop and you realise, oh my goodness, I could have got that pen for a lot less. It never was worth £100. So you have to be sure in property that the discount you are getting is a discount from the market value and it's not a discount from the asking price. Sometimes the asking price is the market value, but sometimes the asking price is inflated. So you have to do your research to make sure that the price you are getting a discount from is actually the current market value. So, Rob, we've covered below market value and what it is before on previous courses and podcasts. But as a quick recap, what are a few ways you can do to establish whether the price you're buying at is truly below market value?
Well, the best way to do it is to do exactly what a valuer will do. If you instruct a valuation, or if a mortgage lender instructs a valuation, what they will do is they'll send someone out to look at the property and assess its condition, and then try to establish its value relative to other properties that have sold recently. And you can do exactly the same thing. You can go onto the land registry, or you can go onto the sold house prices section of Rightmove, which is drawing from the same data, but I find it presented in a bit more of a friendly way. You can do a search for that postcode, look within a quarter of a mile, and you can see what properties have sold for in the past. What you're then looking for is properties that are as similar as possible to the one that you're looking at. Because, of course, houses that are bigger, that are in better condition, that are in slightly better locations, even if it's within a tight area, are always going to sell at higher prices. So what you're looking for is comparables. Ideally, you want to say, okay, I'm looking to buy this house. Well, last month, the house next door sold for this much money and the condition is exactly the same. Therefore, I can be confident that if I'm paying £10,000 less than that, I'm getting a good deal. In reality, it's never going to be quite that straightforward. You tend not to have really great comparables. And you also need to be careful because there's a lag before information appears on the land registry. It's normally multiple months. So because the property market is changing all the time, it's possible that prices have gone up or down in the period since transactions appeared on the land registry. So professional valuers will speak to agents and get some inside information about transactions that have gone through recently but not yet appeared. You may or may not be able to do that, but you can go and look at properties listed on Rightmove as sold and see what price they were marketed at. That doesn't tell you what price they were sold for, but it does at least give you some kind of indication of what price people are going for in the market and if those type of properties are moving at that type of price or if they're just languishing on the market. So it's never going to be an exact exercise. In some areas, it's harder than others because the comparables just aren't there, but that's the process that you should be trying to go through. What you should not be doing is saying, oh, well, the asking price is this, and I've managed to get £5,000 off it. Therefore, it's BMV. No, the asking price is not the market value. It may be, but it may not be. And that's why you need to look at other sales to establish what the real value is.
Okay, so we understand what BMV is and we understand what BMV isn't. And now you understand what it is, you also understand why it's so hard to achieve. Why would somebody allow you to buy a property below market value? Well, there are a number of reasons, and we'll link to a course at the end of this episode, which will help identify those opportunities, help you understand how you can do it and how you can achieve it. So we'll mention that at the end, but don't worry, we've already mentioned courses. This is completely free, no upsell, no catches. We'll give you the details shortly. This episode is not about how to negotiate a BMV deal. It's about, is it possible? And if it is possible, how can it be possible? Because right now, the market is booming. We've talked about that already. We've talked about it a lot. So let's just take that as fact. The market is booming right now. BMV is hard to do in a normal market. It's really hard. At Property Hub, we have a team of people, so not just an individual, a team of people who are dedicated to putting deals together that are better than the market rate. And in a normal market, they can go weeks and weeks and weeks without putting a deal together. Now, you can always put a property deal together, but putting a BMV deal together, it's very, very hard. So with it being difficult in a normal market, in a booming market, is it possible? Well, the answer is yes, but you're going to have to do more than normal. And we're going to talk about that now. What can you do? Where can you look for below market value opportunities? And I think it's worth saying that if you somehow come across any deal that's below market value right now, and you've done your research, and it appears that it is below market value, and legally it's all sound, don't mess around. The first tip is speed. Make sure you're quick when the opportunity arises. But where can the opportunities arise? Well, it's thinking differently to everybody else and going against the crowd, because normally that's where the opportunities lie in property and in life in general. So where is not hot right now? Where's the area that we've been talking about that isn't performing and therefore may present opportunity? It's that capital city you may have heard of, London.
Exactly. And this is something that has been so apparent from sort of big conversations I've had recently and communications I've received. Whenever we talk about how quickly properties are selling or how well the market's doing, we always get people replying going, oh, I don't believe that. That's not what it's been like for me at all. And they go, are you in London by any chance? And it always turns out that they are. The London market is just completely different from the rest of the country right now. That is bad news if you're trying to sell a property in London. But that means it's good news if you're in the market to buy a property in London right now. BMV opportunities always come about because somebody needs to sell. You're never going to give a property away for less than it's worth by choice. So it's always a forced sale situation. And there will be sellers in London who need to sell and are struggling to do so. Therefore, there will be opportunities. London is almost operating at the moment in a different phase of the property cycle. If you are a buyer in London, it's a bit like it was in sort of 2010 or so, where the market had bottomed out, it was okay, but there just wasn't much activity and agents were really accommodating and really keen to get you in and to do a deal. So that does involve going against the grain, going against what most people are doing, but it creates opportunity. Similarly, Rob, you could say the same for a lot of city centres, because there's been a lot said about this race for space, how everyone is looking for a place in the countryside, everyone's looking to trade up, looking for somewhere with a garden. Well, that just creates opportunities in the cities themselves.
Yeah, when other people switch off, it's time to switch on. So, that's not going to happen right now. City centres are dead. Extreme views, that's when you get interested. Because we've got 2 offices in 2 cities, one in London and one in Manchester. So I go to them. And I can assure you, they're not dead. They're far from dead. And yes, in parts of those cities, they are quieter than they have been, but they are getting busier and busier. And at some point, it may be months, it may be years, the activity levels there, and it might be different activity, but the activity levels will return to what we've seen previously. And that means then probably the property market will return to levels we've seen previously. So city centres have not been growing anywhere near as much as the rest of the UK right now, very similar to London as a whole. And that gets us interested because the green shoots of growth in those city centres are starting to appear. We talked about the numbers from Home Track last week, which focus on city centres, and it's been very strong recently. It looks like growth is starting to return. And that could be the beginning of a wave of property price pushes. And that wouldn't surprise me if it was the beginning of property prices starting to rise in those areas. But before it does happen, there may be opportunity. You may have sellers who are frustrated that the market is slower, that they can't get rid of their property as quickly as they want. And if you have a seller that wants to move quickly, that is one of the ways you can achieve a below market value deal. Another way is by dealing with a developer. If a developer is completed in the last 12 months and still hasn't sold all their units, well, chances are they've probably got finance against those units and all their cash is wrapped up in those units, so they're desperate to get out. Now, they're not going to give them away, but you may be able to get them for less than what other people have paid in the same block. That's something that we've achieved at Property Hub Invest. I'm not going to pretend we do it all the time. We don't. It's really hard, but we have done it. And we've been able to get our investors into units that other people in the last 12 months have paid more for. And that's what we've talked about previously, anchoring to sold prices as a way of assessing below market value. Well, it makes it very easy for those investors to see that they've done very well. So city centres are absolutely an area right now that you can look for opportunities and, with the right seller, with the right motivation, do a deal. But if you're going to do a deal, we've already talked about speed, but it's not just having a strong coffee in the morning, right? Oh, I'm on it. You've got to be a bit more on it than just, alert. There's things you can do, Rob, and there's things you should be doing if you are keen to bag a deal. Because as we said, it's not easy. You have to put more effort in than most, but there are practical steps you can take to make sure you are doing more than most.
Definitely. The first thing you need to do is actually be active in your target area and know what is on the market and coming to market in that area. You should have Rightmove alerts set up for the areas that you're interested in buying in. You should set them up to come in either instantly or every day. And so you're always seeing what's coming onto the market. And you should also be regularly going to check on how quickly things are moving. You should also be nurturing your network at this point. It's always said about networks that you should build it before you need it. And this is where, if you have built it, it'll really pay off because you can start putting the word out to people who have the potential to bring properties your way, that you are active, that you are looking. And so if they come across somebody who's in a position where they're really struggling and they're willing to take a hit and get the deal done quickly, they can let you know. Having that network is so important because when you're just looking at publicly available information, by definition, everyone else is seeing it as well. And you're not going to be the only person who is in the market. You might be one of fewer, but you're not going to be the only one. Therefore, any extra information that you can get to find out about things that haven't come to market yet, or maybe find out that a transaction has fallen through, and as a result of that, the seller is now desperate to get a deal done quickly just because they've already committed to another purchase, for example, well, that's great information to have. So if you don't have that network in place now, start building it quickly for next time. So the first step, Rob, is actually knowing what's going on in your local market. The second is being in a position to move quickly and prove that you can move quickly.
Yeah, make sure your finances are in order. So if you're buying with a mortgage, then have a decision in principle ready. and understand what lending options you have available. Obviously, engage with a mortgage broker. So then when you go to put an offer in, you can say your mortgage is arranged. That shows that you're on it. That shows that you're organised. Even better, though, and it's easier said than done because not everyone has the financial capacity to do this, is making yourself a cash buyer. Now, if you don't have the cash available, then you might be able to refinance, take equity out another property and sit on it. And then effectively you become a cash buyer. And then if you want to, you can refinance that property after 6 months and get your cash back out. But in the beginning, you've been a cash buyer. That's going to make you very, very attractive. So if someone's looking to do a deal, and we've talked about how you need to be on it, cash buyers can show they've got the potential to be on it. But to really be on it, you're going to need your legal set up and ready to go. Now, if you've worked with a solicitor that you know is efficient, then work with them again. That's nice and easy. If you've not worked with a solicitor before, that's not been really quick and effective, then you need to change your solicitor and find one that is. Now, it's easier said than done because they'll all say they're quick. So ask for referrals. Rob's talked about you having a network already. Speak to other people. Get recommendations. If you don't have that network in real life yet, then jump on the forums. You've got the Property Hub forum. There are other property forums out there as well. Network online and ask for recommendations if you don't have someone lined up. So having yourself organised and finances are really important. Another way you can become more financially attractive to a seller is if you can do a bulk deal. Now, if you're negotiating on an individual unit, then this doesn't really apply. But we talked about city centres and developments there and potentially doing a deal. Now, if you're on your own, then you may be able to do a deal. But if you can go in a group, Rob, you can possibly do even better.
Definitely. If you're in a situation where the developer wants to move the last 3 or 4 units, going in and saying, well, we will get you completely off-site, we will take those last 3 and 4 off your hands, it's so much more attractive than just going in and buying one. If they know that the whole development will be done in 60 days' time or however long it'll take to complete, they'll be willing to pay something for that certainty. The same goes for very small blocks or converted houses. So you'll sometimes get a house that's been converted into 3 flats, or you'll get a very small block of 4 to 6 units, and those tend to be tougher to sell because, quite simply, their price point is higher because there are multiple units, which means there are fewer people in the market at that price level. And of course, you're only appealing to investors, so the owner-occupier market just isn't there. As a result, it can be easier to do BMV deals on that type of property than on just a single unit because the competition is lower. And as we've said repeatedly, that is the key. You're kind of looking for opportunities where there is limited competition and you can place yourself ahead of that competition. So if you don't have the ability to access that segment of the market on your own, then see if you can get a few people together to do that deal. So you could structure it in different ways. So you could actually buy as a joint venture. You could take a block that you collectively own, perhaps as a company between you, and then you've got an agreement to what you're going to do with the income and when you're going to sell. Or you could just very simply bring the group of people together and everyone buys their own individual unit. But you've made the deal happen for yourself and for everyone else by actually bringing those people together, telling them about the opportunity, explaining it to them, and then making it happen. So if you can do that with a small group of friends or a few contacts, you can end up being able to do a deal for yourself and being able to enable other people to do a really great deal purely by bringing those people together. Really, that's what we do at Property Hub Invest, but we just do it at a bigger scale. So we're talking about lot sizes far bigger than 3 or 4, but because we're able to go out in significant bulk, we're able to access significantly better than average opportunities because we're able to go and give developers a large volume of sales very quickly, which is something that not many other people can do. But you don't have to use Property Hub Invest to do that. You can do a version of it on your own.
And remember, don't be greedy. Just because you fancy yourself as a hot negotiator and you have to do a deal, don't get carried away. Don't anchor to a number that you must get. So I'm going to achieve 10% below the market value. And somehow you get yourself to 7%. Don't be stubborn and go, no, it's 10 or nothing. Because I tell you what you'll end up doing, nothing. And you'll end up doing no deals at all. Doing at market value deals in this market is much better than doing no deals at all. Now, of course, if you can get a discount, why wouldn't you? But the market is being so kind at the moment, and if it continues the way it is, if you buy at market rate and it continues to grow at the pace it is right now, then in 12 months' time, your property could be worth 10% more. That's a huge, huge number. So don't let greed blind you. And remember, don't now anchor yourself to past deals you've done. So if you've been successful enough to get a deal in the past that was below market value, and let's say you've got like a massive number like 12%, don't expect to get that now. Like, if you got 5% in this market, then you're doing really, really well. Like, really well. So below market value of any level right now, true below market value of any level right now, is just a no-brainer. Because when the market is growing at the rate it is, and you still get a discount, then once you've done your research, there isn't a lot more thought to be put into this. You buy it, and you buy it as quickly as you can, and you pray the deal doesn't fall over. Because as the transaction progresses, you don't want the seller to wake up to the fact that the market is still continuing to move, and 2 months later, they could achieve a lot more. I've seen a lot of deals fall over because sellers have woken up to the fact that they can get more money, and it's only going to happen more in this market. So if you can get yourself a deal of any level in this market, jump on it fast, and do not mess around. That's probably the biggest advice we can give you right now is if you are lucky enough to get your hands on a deal, just do the deal. And Rob, we've talked a lot about the market and specific tactics during this market and how you operate when the market is booming. But there are general lessons and general principles that you can apply and different strategies you can use to achieve a below market value deal. And we haven't covered that in this episode, but luckily we've got a course, as we said, completely free that people can take advantage of.
Yes, we have. It's called How to Get a Deal When Buying Property, and it's available as part of Property Hub University. So we'll link to it in the show notes for this episode. You just need to become a Property Hub member. It's completely free. Then you can take that course and put yourself in the best possible position to secure a deal. It's not an easy market to do it in. You're going to have to adjust your expectations, as Rob said. But if you can develop these skills, they'll serve you well, whatever the property market throws at you. So time for Hub Extra now. It's that part of the show that we squeeze in just before the end, where we give you a little bit more in the form of a resource, a quote, a tool, something to send you on your way a little bit wiser. And then on a Friday morning, we send you the Hub Extra email, which we aim to make the most valuable email you receive all week. And that will hit your inbox on a Friday morning if you're a Property Hub member. This week's Hub Extra recommendation is a book that you've read, Rob, and I always love book recommendations in any form, but this one sounds particularly interesting.
Yeah, it's a combination of sport and business. So if you have any interest in sport and an interest in business and success stories, then this is a book for you. Even if you're not that fussed on sport, you might still enjoy it. It's a very easy read. It's not one of those books that are going to hurt your head. But the book is called Relentless. It's 12 Rounds to Success, and it's by Eddie Hearn. If that name sounds familiar, well, it probably should, because Eddie Hearn runs Matchroom. And Matchroom are the company that promote the biggest boxing matches in the world. They also promote snooker and darts and lots of other sports. So they are well known. They're a huge company, huge promotion company. And I really enjoyed this book because it's a bit different. Lots of books are rags to riches stories. And you know what? They're great stories. But what I really enjoyed about this book is Eddie Hearn was from a very wealthy family. And his dad, Barry Hearn, was a self-made man. And it really talked about his struggles to become his own man and establish himself and his own legacy and everything that he wants to do. And he's ridiculously ambitious and driven, and he's done incredible things. And it's, debatable, but you could say he's possibly taken on that mantle from his dad and surpassed his achievements. Now, there are critics who will go, well, he had a great leg up, didn't he? And you know what? He did. But he acknowledges that. And that's what I really liked about this book is, first of all, his honesty around that. And, he wasn't trying to hide the fact that he's had this huge leg up, and he acknowledges his luck. But we all have luck in different ways. And some of us may not identify as lucky. But if you want to be successful in business, if you don't feel like that way, then you need to manufacture it somehow, because you need to feel lucky. You need to feel things are going to go your way. And when luck presents itself, you need to jump all over that opportunity. Lots of us are given opportunity. Lots of us are shown a slightly open door. But when that door of opportunity slightly opens, you need to kick it open and take full advantage of it. Yeah, a lot of people in business get a lot of luck. I can tell you, Rob and I have had ridiculous amounts of luck. But we've also had a lot of hard work go in as well. And we've worked hard to take advantage of those opportunities that have been presented to us. The other thing I like about this book is it's not anything new. In fact, it's a common pattern you see. But the fact it's a common pattern should give you reassurance if, you're trying to go on your own journey and build something successful, whatever that might be in life. is that there are just common traits of people who've had success. And it's not the first book I've read that talks about these traits, and I'm sure it won't be the last. But it talks about taking advantage of your opportunities, which we've talked about, but also mindset, staying away from negative people and making sure that you have a winning mindset, and self-awareness. Rob, mindset, self-awareness, taking advantage of your luck. This book is not revolutionary. This book, Eddie Hearn is not the first person to acknowledge those things. But that's what should give people inspiration, is that there are common patterns to success, and there isn't a wealth secret or a success secret. In fact, it's well documented and well published on what successful and wealthy and whatever your aspiration is, whatever your definition of success is, there's well documented paths to success.
Exactly. And the mindset aspect of it is so important. Some of the best comments that we've had on this podcast in all the years we've been doing it is actually not the property stuff. It's when we've talked about mindset and attitude and things like that. That's what many people have found the most valuable out of everything we've done, despite all the specific knowledge that we've given about investing in property. And while, like you've already said, Rob, it's not unique, the book you read didn't come up with this stuff, we didn't come up with this stuff. And even if you already know it, I still think it's really useful to read things that reinforce the point every so often. Because even if you know it, you can find yourself forgetting it and either falling into bad habits or wasting time searching for a secret about the one little bit of information that's going to get you the result, when in fact all you need to do is put the work in and then seize the opportunity when it emerges as a result of that hard work. You can forget that. So reminding yourself every so often is so useful. So we will link to that book in the show notes, and it's one that I will definitely be reading.
So that's just done for another week. Of course, we'll be back next Thursday with the Property Podcast. But before then, we'll be back with Ask Rob and Rob, which will be in your feed on Tuesday. So make sure you check that out. So until those wonderful events occur, take care, have fun. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.